How you doing?
Yeah!
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Whoop, there
Um,
it is.
oh my God.
Don't,
Anyway,
don't, 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 don't.
how you doing? Okay?
Oh, I'm great, David. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm
Yeah?
glad the album's out and I can just sort of have a little breather. It's been so long since I put a record out, so doing all the press was like a new thing.
Yeah, you'd
I mean, it
forgotten
felt
about
like
it.
yeah, and then of course I'm like 15 years older, and you're like, oh my God, this is like work.
It's a different
But
landscape completely, isn't it? In terms of like how and what you would do around an album released 15 years ago as based to now. So different.
oh my God, it's completely Jeff Barrett said to me, he says, "David, do you wanna know what's changed about the music industry?" I went, "What, Jeff?" He went, "Everything." You know, so I was like, it made me laugh, but he's
Oh,
totally true. It's totally true. Even trying to get your record reviewed, and I did really well. Like I got Mojo and Uncut and the Sunday Times, and you
yeah.
know, it was nice, but I've heard that a lot of people aren't even getting reviewed, and it's just this and so many other papers, they become really kind of corporate.
Yeah.
So it's like it's not about the quality anymore, really. It's about, who's got the clout and you
I
know,
mean, I can't imagine what it's like for a new artist now in terms of trying to break through. Um, and it's yeah, it's I kind of I'm not as involved in kind of doing radio shows like I used to and stuff. And but even when I was maybe about 5 years ago, I was doing a breakfast show on Virgin Radio, and for me, one of the main things about that was about trying to purely find things that I connected with, and so I wouldn't let anybody else do that for me. It was about me kind of listening to everything and it not being about and not having any preconception about who it was. So it wasn't even about looking at who the artist was, what it was, but just you've got to listen to it, you've got to feel it, you've got to have a response to it, sort of thing. And I just don't think
absolutely.
there's not enough of that around at the minute in
No,
terms
there
of
wasn't. I was actually sort of, just daydreaming yesterday on my way home from the weekend, and I was thinking, if I had the money, if I
yeah,
was like a billionaire, for instance, I would just start a magazine, and it would just be for just good records,
yeah,
just yeah, and actually, you don't put the Rolling Stones on the cover. You don't I mean, it's come on. It's like
they don't
and
need
and
it.
I think the audience is much cleverer than that, and I think that's a lot of people there's a certain element of playing safe as well.
Yeah,
But when I meet someone, like if I meet a young person and they say, which often happens, I get emails, "Can you give me some advice? I wanna get into film, etcetera." And the first thing I say to them is, if you cannot imagine, like, doing music for the rest of your life, I mean, it's the only thing that's gonna make you happy,
yeah,
then that's the only reason why you should do it. Because if you're going into this half-heartedly,
yeah,
it ain't you're wasting your time, you know?
yeah,
So, you gotta do it for you and not for the career, and just trust in, if your music's good enough, it will find an audience, and, but if you're getting into this half-hearted
yeah,
and it's just like, "Yeah, that seems like a bit of a laugh," forget about it, because it's
yeah,
not gonna happen. You're gonna end up sort of banging your head up against a brick
yeah.
wall.
Well, the lovely thing you've
So
done with this record is that you with kind of bringing Raven on board as as a full collaborator on this record, just such a beautiful marriage of of the world you've created, and her voice is just amazing. That's an amazing opportunity to give someone, in terms of that bringing those worlds together of of someone who's been making music across so many different types of
well, that's
of
how Raven did get involved because her dad, Keefus, who is part of Unloved, um, he rang me up and he says, "Look, Raven's at a bit of a loose end. Um, could you give her a ring? Because I'm Raven's godfather, right?"
awesome.
She decided to get christened when she was, like, 17.
Mhm.
She went, "I wanna get christened, you never christened me," you know? Um, Classic LA. But, not getting christened, but deciding to get christened.
Yeah.
I want but and fair enough, if that makes you happy. So that created a different bond between us. For sure, because when she was a kid, she used to just snarl at me because I used to try and talk her into doing vocals on Unloved, like, "Come and do some harmonies. I bet you've got a great voice." And she was like, "Ugh," "Piss off," you know? And
Yeah.
then one day I coaxed her, so then our relationship just developed, and, uh, when Keith was asking me, I called her up and I says, "Look, I'm doing this one-off record for this club in, Todmerton." It's like Todmorden, the Golden Lion up there.
Yeah.
It's mad little place. I played there on Saturday night. It was insane. There was
Was
literally, it
it?
was like a goal being scored for 4 hours,
Wow.
and people just pogoing and stuff,
Amazing.
And, so anyway, I did that track, and I just had to turn a phrase, which was "Love is a mystery," and I says, "Let's just play with this, and then I'll cut it all up and put different echoes and delays and reverbs and stuff on it," and we did it, and it sounded really good, and then I wrote "Hope is the Last Thing to Die" because there is a version of this album with me singing all the songs, so I would sort of write the song, sing the song, send it to her, and then she would copy me, but she would add her own sort of style, but Raven is I always describe her as like Michelle Phillips, but with tons of attitude. So it's not like sunny, and even though her voice is really beautiful, it's
Yeah.
not twee or
Yeah,
flowery
yeah.
or anything. There's a kind of a toughness to it. And so we did one, and then we did It's Over If It's and then I went, fuck, we gotta do the album. So I continued just writing, singing the songs, getting the melodies, harmonies, and then I'd send them to her. And then she would send it back, and I'd be like, holy shit. And there was a part of that because I had to make a decision at a point whether it was going to be her or me,
Mhm.
and I didn't want to do a duet thing. Um, and I've been doing a lot of I did a lot of mushroom therapy, and that was really, one of the things that it did was completely decimate my ego. So I'm kind of like, actually, with Raven singing these songs, it's going to have a lot more power. Those words coming out of the voice of a young mid-20s woman,
Yeah.
and I was like, yeah, let's just do that. So I got her involved in the album, and she wrote to me on Friday, and she says, just she thanked me for going through that journey was really cathartic for her, and it helped her sort out a lot of stuff in her life, and that was the best thing ever, just to hear that. So
Oh.
I
It's
would definitely, I think I'm gonna put the record out maybe though, my
with your
version, like,
yeah.
yeah, 500 copy, like, record store day or something.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's interesting that, isn't it, in terms of like how it can be, almost like the same thing really, but can be many different versions of it in a way as
Yeah,
well.
I'd love to
It's
get one
lovely
done in
that.
French, get, like, a French singer to just, like, "Okay, here's all the words, do the whole thing in French, or do it in Italian," because probably because, all the themes in the record are so universal.
Yeah.
It's just the first time you know, when we grew up, there were pockets of chaos and trouble, like Belfast is a perfect example. Um, but it was never we never had this kind of like everyone, like the way everyone went through COVID together. It was such
Yeah.
a new experience. So maybe it will translate into um other languages, maybe.
Yeah,
I yeah,
absolutely.
we'll
When
see. I'll
you're
speak to the record company.
But that marriage of kind of, the what you've created, Raven's voice, but then also these wonderful kind of recordings of spoken word of different languages that are already in there with really kind of, now more than ever in terms of making people think and consider other cultures, other people, other experiences of what people are going through. I think it's so not enough people are doing that within their creativity, I think. And it's
Yeah,
kind
I
of
mean,
really brilliant to have that as part of something that's so inspiring and uplifting. It kind of gives hope in a way, I feel.
well, it becomes about the we rather than me, you know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
actually something I learned from Noel Gallagher. Just, I mean, I think that's a feeling anyway, but I heard an interview with him and he said, you know, the reason why Oasis were so successful is because it was about us. It wasn't about me. It was like, you know, we're a gang, we're a team, we're going forward, we're all in this together. And you know, that really became a part of, you know, I mean, I wasn't thinking that, but it was obviously happening, you know, throughout.
Yeah.
And then I realized at a certain point that, like, you know, I'm speaking for a lot of people. This isn't just a very singular sort of view. So all those voices on the record, the first one is like a kid from Afghanistan who's like 17. And it was him basically just saying how betrayed he felt about, you know, when the invasion happened, as he called it. Um, you know, they were there to give the people freedom and from these tyrants, and you know, and then suddenly overnight they were just going, "All right, we're away," and it's back to normal. And so he made his way from Afghanistan and ended up in Belfast. But he says that
Wow.
Belfast was the first place he got to where people were really warm to him and understood his plight. And
Mm.
um, I thought that was really, you know, I felt really proud of that because a lot of people here, I think, not everyone, of course, but there's definitely a lot of people who have learned from history, you know, and it's that adage, you know, that expression, what is it? Those who forget their past are condemned to repeat it.
Mm.
And I think in Belfast, there's a lot of people who haven't forgot.
Yeah.
And so they know what it's like to feel marginalized. And then, so they're, you know, in turn, you're welcoming other people in. Like, we don't have a real, we don't have racism here, really. I mean, if it happens, it's just some angry man who's hates himself, actually.
Yeah.
You know?
It's got to do with him rather than the other person.
Exactly,
Mm.
exactly. So it was lovely to get that, and then I had an ambulance driver from Gaza, and a Ukrainian refugee, and then I wrote some things myself, like the French piece, which was basically just um, stating the facts about what was really, you know, what was happening behind COVID,
Yeah.
and then my friend Kieran O'Maher, who's a Irish-speaking scholar, and I wrote a thing about the DUP and how they kind of wave this carrot of your culture is under threat, and but
Mm.
actually these people, a lot of these people in these like urban areas, are struggling to pay their electricity bill, and you know they won't even go in the government because it
Yeah.
means they're having to sort of sit with Sinn Féin, and you're just like,
Yeah.
why don't you just get on and start representing your people who are hungry and really struggling with inflation. Electricity and gas is through the roof. People are just, you know,
Yeah.
nothing's adding up. So that stuff really angers me as well. But I think a lot of people would say that across every community. You know,
Well,
there's a
that
new generation of kids now in Belfast who are like they're just kind of going, these are all fucking insane.
yeah,
You know,
totally.
what?
Yeah.
And they can't really get their head around like what Belfast used to be like because they've only
Yeah.
known it one day and one way, and that's without the troubles.
Yeah.
That's really encouraging and great to see, you know.
It's such a beautiful journey with this record, David. It really is. It's kind of like, and I
Thank
really
you
like
so
as
much.
well, like even like the fact that the title track's the last track as well, and just how that it's just the most amazing kind of crescendo really to the journey that you go on with a
Oh,
record. It's
thank you
it's
so
it's
much.
a real example of, I'm just an advocate for albums in terms of the opportunity of storytelling within them and the
Exactly.
journey you can go on. And you wouldn't pick up a book and read chapter 2, then chapter 10, then chapter 5 sort of thing. It's kind of like,
Exactly.
this is a great example of an album that you should sit down or just have on and listen right through, because it's brilliant.
Oh,
It's
thank
so
you so
good.
much. You've just made my Monday, which the weather, it looks like the world is ending outside. Um, a lot better. Like,
It really is. And it's just yeah, and I keep going kind of back to it. It's like a lovely companion as well. It's like, oh,
oh wow,
like
wow,
yeah,
wow.
it's great.
Thank you so
How
much.
how much do you think, because it has been a while since you released, something for you really, even though you're saying it's not about you, but it's come from you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and so much of the stuff that you've done over the since the last David Holmes record has been for other people and for other things, whether it be working with Noel. I remember chatting to him when you'd worked with him on that first record, and kind of when he was just so proud and kind of grateful for what you'd unlocked in him, in terms of like pushing him in directions that he was probably maybe slightly apprehensive about going down and things. And then all the soundtrack stuff, whether it be things like Soderbergh, who we've talked about you on the show when I was lucky enough to have him on the show, and or Killing Eve or Good Vibrations, The Fall, all that stuff. It's just has all that fed into this in a way, or in terms of like, or do you keep, or is it a totally different thing for you working on the soundtrack stuff to working on your own stuff?
I think film music is more like a craft, and very and the odd time it becomes like just art, you know, and that's all to do with the film. So I'm always like working to a story, and I think that's why my albums are kind of like a bit almost conceptual. I would never call it a concept album,
Hmm.
but there is a story, and I think fundamentally music for film is storytelling. So you're working with the story, but you're also collaborating. And I just try to collaborate with people who have good taste in music, because it's very difficult to get someone to understand something that they don't feel,
Yeah.
so you have to be really careful who you work with. And I love doing that. I just love the freshness of it. I think that's the way my brain is wired as well. Like, I was before lockdown, I was diagnosed with a really intense form of OCD, but because I didn't have the compulsion, like the washing of the hands, the turning off the lights, just
Yeah.
going around the whole house, everything has to be in perfect order. I just had the obsession. So, but my obsession would build into, you know, uh, self-fulfilling prophecies. It became out of control. So
Yeah.
you would like, there's 75% of that is really productive and great. And then you've got the other 25% that can actually be just really destructive. And you start inventing things in your brain, and things become, you read into everything. But I think everyone is guilty of that, of it
Hmm.
to a certain degree. But with me, I couldn't get off the Ferris wheel. So it would just spiral out of control. And to the point where you're like, seeking help. So I got, once I had that diagnosis, it became kind of tangible.
Yeah.
I was like, it was like a relief, because I just thought it was, 30 years of acid house. And, I remember the psychiatrist saying to me, "That didn't help, but that's not what your problem is." And he
Yeah.
was able to bring it right back to trauma that I suffered, like, growing up in Belfast.
Yeah.
Um, so but it was brilliant. It felt like, "Oh my god, I can actually see again." And then I started doing the mushroom, like, the psychedelic therapy, just
Yeah.
micro, and reading a lot about understanding why that works. Because when I was young, the psychedelics I took, I was just greedy, and
Mm.
it just became about like sort of rolling around laughing with your friends, or
Yeah.
in a couple of cases rolling around crying because you were having a terrible time. But
Yeah.
it was about understanding that actually, when you have a problem in your mind, you know, you don't run away from it. You actually
Mm.
invite it in for a chat. So you actually sit down, like, in your mind, and you
Yeah.
work it out, and then because you're getting this kind of like shifted perspective in your brain, and like the doors of perception, it's kind of, it just helps you see things from like a different angle, and then so yeah. I mean, just having that shift of perspective, and suddenly I felt like a completely new person, like it completely cleared the fog,
Hmm.
and I started to see things much more clearly. I, be, uh, I was one of the lucky ones that used COVID to do something like that. I'm going to
Yeah.
like take charge of my mental health, but through that, I just became, um, I had more time for other things, like what's going on in the world. And
Yeah.
being a child of the Troubles, the last thing I wanted to talk about in 1989 was the Troubles. I was too busy having the best time of my life. With that was I actually seen an old interview of mine in Jockey Slut. It was like 1991 or something, and I said, um, the first thing was I don't want to talk about the Troubles, because I was just it was still happening,
Yeah.
so I was kind of like running away from it completely, and so it was like, yeah, um, I could see everything just so much more clearly, and I, w- I just start writing stuff down, like notes, thoughts. I'd hear like a newsreader say something, or I'd hear something on a radio show, um, uh, or anything. Wherever I picked it up, I just write it down. So
Yeah.
that all started to sort of form like songs, and so I didn't think I'm writing a protest album. I was just following my heart, but I was really um still getting quite angry, and but not about the wrong things, not about
Yeah.
your imagination running away with itself, and learning how to live in the moment. um was just like, it was like a get just getting this was
Yes.
like the best gift ever.
Yeah.
And you know and I kind of felt like, I kind of feel like at the beginning of something. So I just kept on going, and it just fire was back in my belly in a really, Maisie, get back here. Come on,
Oh.
come on. It's the first time she's ever done that. Hang on a second.
Your
Come here.
dog.
This is Maisie.
Hi, Maisie. Oh, so cute.
I
Oh
know
my
she
God.
gets a lot of attention, don't you? Here,
Oh,
one up there.
I love it. But I
Um,
think you'd be surprised how many people. I mean, I definitely feel like I had a little bit of that during COVID because there was nowhere to escape to. So the
yeah,
only place to, so you had to almost address stuff that was going on kind of internally with yourself before you could help others around you, the family and whatnot and stuff. One of the things I think that for me was that I kind of like on those mornings where you'd wake up and you felt like there was like a cloud just there weighing you down. It
yeah,
was
yeah,
almost kind of going just getting to that point where you had to just go and okay, I've recognized that. I know that it's going to be one of those days. I don't quite know why yet, but I've just got to recognize it, accept it, and then know that tomorrow's going to be another day. So it's
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like, and so that was, I think that you'll be, I don't know whether that's why, maybe why, like with the record and stuff, in terms of the journey that I went on listening to it for the first time I listened to it, it's that kind of thing. I think you'll be surprised how many people will relate to what you're talking about there in terms of kind of COVID actually was that sort of forced period was a real, not for everybody, but for some people, was a moment for them to kind of almost help them find themselves a bit.
yeah. I mean, I like yourself. I feel very grateful that I was able to do that during COVID. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because obviously there was a lot of horror stories
yeah,
of, just people, too many people
yeah,
in the same room, like 24/7. You know what I mean? And so I always think about those people as well. Um, but just to be able to reset um, was like a blessing. I
yeah.
mean, so I'll just it's kind of like you're just waiting for the rest of the world to sort itself out so we can all be
If
happy again.
only, if
But
only, if
but it
only.
it doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon. I
No.
say they sacked Cruella.
Yeah. And
She
brought
got.
back David Cameron.
I know. Like, what's that all about?
I mean,
Apparently he's bored shitless. So that was a quote.
wow. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. How are we lucky that we've got film and music to escape to in this world? It's like, God almighty, if now more
Oh
than
my
ever,
God.
the getting into a cinema and escaping to like, oh, it's just like, God, we need it more than ever. I was listening back to when Soderbergh came on the podcast, it's a good few years ago now for Logan Lucky. And I was just listening back to that at the weekend actually. And it's so brilliant. I was terrified about interviewing him, I've got to be honest, because I don't know, I was just so in my head. I was I don't know what it was. I think it's because maybe I wanted to impress him, or I wanted him to know that I didn't want to kind of fangirl out, and I didn't want to sort of gush. I wanted
Yeah,
to
yeah.
learn and I wanted to know stuff for him. And in my head, I was intimidated by him before I'd even met him, which is such bullshit. But anyway, and he's like, I don't know, he's just kind of just so he was so brilliant talking about you and just about how much you informed so much of the landscape of the films that you worked on together. I mean, if you think of those Oceans films, the music around those films is is the color of those films. It's the rhythm of those films. It's so much about it's the tone of those films. If you took away all the music in those films, I mean, they would still be entertaining, but in no way to the level that they are. And I
Oh,
hope
thank you
you
so
take a
much.
minute to sort of appreciate that as well.
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, I haven't thought of it like that before, because I just think, I just try to do the best job I can, and then
Mhm.
that's why I still work with Steven, because as a director, you have to wear every single hat.
Yeah,
So you wanna know that people that, the heads of department, as it were, that is working for a director, any director, you want to think that they're giving you as much as they're given to the project, and that's all I ever try to do, because I think that's like a working class sort of ethic, like you're given an opportunity and you don't try not to fuck it up, you know?
yeah,
And I think that I've never took that for granted because Stephen, working for him, especially him, it's sort of allows you the freedom to go and do like produce a band that have absolutely no money, which I'm doing at the minute. Like I've done it before, I've done it a few times, but I could never do that if I hadn't, working for Stephen because, it kind of just gives you a breather to be
yeah,
able to go, okay, let's do something, or let's do like a really small budget, or produce someone, or so I love all aspects of what I do. Um, just probably because of the way my brain is wired, like the obsessional thing. So I can, I like having a few projects going at the same time because
yeah,
when you stop working on one and you jump into another, when I'm in that other one, all I'm doing is giving it that 100% attention. So when I come back to the other one, I have a real clear perspective. I can, you know, um, it's much more objective, rather than like sometimes you just can't see the woods for the trees. So
yeah,
step back from that, um, when you step back from that, it just sort of it really actually helps the other projects because you're just not fixed to it all the time, and
yeah,
it remains fresh in your mind, So that's a real positive,
yeah.
But Soderbergh is um it's amazing, we've never actually went out and, "Hey, I'm in town, do you wanna grab a drink?" or anything like that. We're friends, but in a very unique way,
Yeah.
and, uh, so when he asked me to do something, I'm just like, "I'll start tonight,"
Yeah. Start
it
sending him playlists. He loves like he was just you could see his face lighting up when he was kind of almost like recollecting like just the constant music that you would send him, like, and stuff that he'd never heard of, and he's like, where does he find this stuff? It's like he's just this amazing kind of like, I don't know, like encyclopedia of music that he just like throws up things that you didn't even know that you needed, but as soon as you hear it you're like, I needed that.
Yeah, no, that's lovely to hear. You know, when I do like any project, even though I've got like, tons of records and, blah, 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 music was always first in my life before any
Yeah.
form of career or anything like that. Um, Doing it for a living allows you the luxury of to be able to just, buying records is what I do. So uh, to me, that's just like, whoa, I never want to lose this.
Yeah.
So if I have a thing, I will go and do loads of research. It's not as if, I mean, I have a massive record collection, of course I do, but I still, if I have a certain project that's got a certain style, or just the director has a certain vision, I'll do a lot of research
Hmm.
as well. And sometimes my record collection, it's all there for me, and I just have to. But sometimes you just have to go and dig even deeper. But that's an amazing. That's so exciting to do
Yeah.
because it's music that I love. Like I've got a theory, which is only send them music that you love, and then no matter what they choose, it'll be something that you love.
Yes.
And then you have to respect the director. Um, you know, um, where he's thinking. But I have such a shorthand with Stephen now,
Mm.
where he can just say, "This is the ballpark." We don't even discuss the script. He just
Amazing.
trusts that I read the script, and then I understand the story, and
Yeah.
then he says, "This is your ballpark." So that ballpark, I gotta sort of like unpack in loads of different ways. So it's like, okay, I have to imagine this ballpark emotionally. I, you know, how how can I turn this into several different emotions?
Hmm.
With excitement and all of that. So because the films just have they have a trajectory of lots of different moments that
Yeah.
turn into sequences that are emotionally all different. So you know some of the my favorite work I've done without seeing the film. So, you read the script, you talk to the director, and then you imagine what the score is, and then, or for songs, and then you just do a bunch and then give it over, and it all works. And I'm like, that's so good, because if I was working and I'm watching the picture all the time,
Yeah.
that's going to affect what the music's like. So you're doing it. It's just a different way of doing it. At the end of the day, what you're imagining is a world that's littered with different emotions, and so
What
and
about,
then you just start to create your own continuity. You just feel it rather than think it.
was that the same with Killing Eve, in terms of that episodic thing, because as opposed to a kind of feature length thing, because that was
Killing
only
Eve,
episodic.
Killing Eve was just one of those projects that fell out of the sky and just landed on Love's back garden. Because when I met Keefus and Jade, we made about 30 tracks, and we didn't really have a home for them. But then we signed to Heavenly, or we put the first one out ourselves, actually. But we had all these other tracks, and then I was asked to do it. And the story, obviously, female led, very female show, period.
Yeah.
And I just had a feeling that On Love was going to work. So I sent them like all the tracks, and they sent me back the first episode, and they had 4 tracks in the first episode. So that became a voice. So
Oh,
once I
wow.
once I seen it work, it was like, well, this is so, I mean, this is perfect. I can't. So then I started introducing other tracks like that represented the different countries, like Spanish music, like hip, cool, in the same ballpark, you know, as Unlove, but French, Italian, you know, which all these tracks exist. I've got that's one I didn't have to do much research for because I had them all.
Yeah.
Um, and then I sent them a few scenes with the score, and they didn't really react that well. Well, they were kind of giving me notes, and I says, "Look, let me give you an episode from
Hmm.
start to finish. Just let me do the thing, like the whole thing." And they said, "Okay, let's give it a go." And I sent them the episode, and they didn't have any notes. It was like, right.
Oh,
So they kind of set the tone with using all the unloved tracks. So I just continued that. And I
amazing.
think in the end they might have licensed like 125 licenses or something throughout the whole
Wow.
series. So it was brilliant for our band because it meant that we were actually really successful, but nobody knew who we were. You know what I mean? It's like I think we've got like, you know, it's like definitely over 50 million like Spotify sort of
Wow.
streams, and um still haven't earned any money. Unbelievable. I mean,
Unbelievable. Oh my
I know
God.
that's a crime in itself. But you know, so that just became really that was just a real like
That's great though.
that was just magic, you know, when that happened.
Yeah.
So it became like such a huge launching pad for the band.
Um,
And I'm not actually in the band anymore. I left because I just want to do different things. Just
yeah,
I want to try new things, and you know,
yeah,
we only get one go, don't we?
absolutely. Was sorry, I'm keeping you for so long, but I've got two
You
quick
know, that's
things I want
fine.
to talk about. Was were because I went down a rabbit hole of just kind of reading and watching stuff that you when talking about things, and were film soundtracks a big part? You said earlier about music being the kind of first love, always, before you thought about it as a career sort of thing. And were film soundtracks part of that? Because I heard you say that weirdly, I watched Midnight Cowboy last week, and I hadn't watched it in ages. And then I went down my rabbit hole of you, and I heard you say that it was one of your favorite scores, like, of all time. And I was like,
Yeah. I mean, for
oh,
many reasons. I grew up in a house full of music. I've like youngest of 10 kids, and I was a complete accident. So I had a sister who was 19, and
yeah.
then 18, 17. You know, it was like a Monty Python sketch the way my mom was having kids. And she yeah, so I grew up around punk and 60s beat and rhythm and blues and soundtracks, you know. Um Midnight Cowboy, I inherited that soundtrack, you know, and this is something that I've only realized over the last 10 years or whatever, but I realized that when I was a kid, there were so many times I wasn't allowed out because of trouble on the street.
Yeah.
So all you have is like we had no money, you know. My mum had 3 jobs, my dad had 3 jobs, you know, everybody helped out in the house. It was like, you had a three or four bedroom terrace house with 10 kids and mum and dad, you know. And um so I spent so much time just with you're just in your imagination. And when you were allowed out, that's when you could have fun like any other kid. And but Belfast, it was a bit different. You know, you had all these other weird options, like you know, breaking into sort of bombed out houses, and making huts and stuff. People
Yeah.
just had their different way of doing that, right? Growing up, and but I spent a lot of time indoors and listened to me, like got really into punk. Like I was 8, I didn't understand it, didn't know what it was, didn't couldn't spell anarchy. Never mind
But
knew
you
what it meant.
felt it. But you
I
felt
felt
it.
I felt it, and that's exactly what happened. So having that kind of, I was having an education
Mhm.
um, by just listening to music, and Midnight Cowboy was one of those films. I seen Midnight Cowboy late night on television, and the first time I seen it was in black and white, and it was the first time that I'd felt funny, like sexually, you
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
without touching myself. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to sort of like be
Yeah.
creative how I'm putting this, um, and it just I've always wanted to be part of those worlds. I've always wanted to be part of a gang, but
Mhm.
in a really productive way, not never violent, just more just dangerous and just being more like a peacock rather than just one of the lads. And that's so, Edith, I'm sure you were the same. You grow up with all these different kind of obsessions, but they're all
Totally.
definitely outside the box of kind of just normal life. I don't know, maybe we were the ones who are normal. It's looking like that at the minute.
I know.
Um,
It's so interesting. You said something earlier that I totally related to, where you were saying about, coming from like a working class background and kind of having to sort of work harder to kind of to get in the door sort of thing, and sort of, and that never really leaving you. And I still feel like that, where you're kind of like, you always kind of go and, sort of almost like that person putting their hand up, kind of going, yeah, what about you? What about sort of thing, and kind of
yeah.
never, never sort of expecting anything or having anything land at your door. It always being something you've got to fight for or work for and stuff. And I love that that's the way that I get stuff or do stuff, or this, this podcast, for example, it came out of nothing apart from pure frustration of not being given a show regularly. Well, fuck it, I'm going to do it myself. And it's
Good
that
for
kind
you.
of thing where you've got to kind of fight for the things that you want to do.
And
And
it's
I
going great, I believe.
Well, do you know what? I love it, and it's my pride and joy professionally. And we've missed. We launched in August 2016, and we've missed 2 episodes, and we put out one every week. And there's
Fantastic.
nobody telling us who to have on. It's about who we want to have on, and it could be, someone like Soderbergh, or it could be someone like Charlotte Regan, who's just released her first feature film, Scrapper, that blew my mind. It's about people have an opportunity to talk about their creativity and what inspired them and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of just think,
You're actually finding it so much better, so much more fun.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's
Not being told, or you can't have them on because they're not a big enough name, or nobody will know who they are. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like we were saying,
I
going
know.
back to that music thing about you were saying about the magazine, it's like, let's not put the Rolling Stones in the cover. Exactly. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It's like
Yeah.
whether they've got a story to tell, something to
Exactly. I
share.
mean,
It's
who
like,
cares? They had their time, help people who are making really exciting music,
yeah.
rather than, they've got they're gonna die very, 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 very wealthy. There's people out there who are really talented and
Yeah.
need our support.
It's also
Um,
that thing when you hear about how much some of the bands charge for like some of the stuff on films, do you know what I mean? And you go like, and it's always the kind of big guns that are like charging like unbelievable amounts of money sort of thing. But then you hear these lovely stories where, I don't know, someone like Michael Stipe from REM will just kind of give his music to new filmmakers because he wants to help them on that journey sort of thing. It's
yeah,
like,
I do that as well. I mean, it's really difficult to make a film, and if you're just beginning and you're just
yeah.
starting out, it's still the same amount of hard work. You still need the same equipment. Okay, everything has to be micromanaged, um, budget wise. Hopefully not creativity.
Mm,
Um, but it's really difficult to make a film. So I support anyone who's like, I haven't got any money, but this track is working so great. And, if I'm into what they're doing, it doesn't even have to be a masterpiece, but if their intentions are good,
yeah.
then I'll be like, of course, just take it. Um,
Well, that's what's
so
so great about you when you see, the kind of, the work that you've done, whether it be with the kind of big guns, but then also supporting those kind of independent films like 71 or Good Vibrations and stuff as well, in terms of getting involved in those stories. Because, well, I guess with those specific, you've got a knowledge of those worlds that you can, I guess,
oh
bring to
yeah,
that musically as well, sort of
sure.
thing. But But you don't have to do that, but you have. Do you know what I mean? And that's
Oh
great.
yeah, no, that is one of the that's the reason why I didn't live in it. Like me, my wife, my daughter, we we went to LA for a year. I was working with Soderbergh, so kind of bought us the chance to sort of do that.
Yeah.
And I was like, Lisa works at the BBC, so she was able to get a year off. Nina was 7. So it was like, this is a really good time to put her into a different school in a different country just
Mm.
for that experience. But well, one day Lisa says, "Would you live here if it wasn't sunny?" And I was like, "Fuck no." And then we decided, that we miss Europe, and but I kind of missed over in Los Angeles, it's more of a business than it's ever been.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of people in charge of things that shouldn't be. And it's become more about money.
Mm.
And, it's more like a fairground ride, And if you're a big name director, you will get the support from the streamers and they'll leave you alone. But new talent is coming in and it's being micromanaged and oh you can't do that and you can't oh no you can't have that
Yeah.
and it's kind of like sort of upside down, so I kind of felt you know that doesn't happen as much in Europe, um and it didn't because I had a production company and we made Good Vibrations, and then I
Love
was
that
asked to
film.
do 70. I know it's a really
Love that film.
yeah, it's hard to make a good film about music. um Glenn and Lisa actually are directing. They're making a documentary about Weatherall,
Oh, really?
Andrew Weatherall. Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's got it. They're so talented. I mean, they are so clever. I put them up there with anyone that I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
Um, and they're really great people as well.
Oh, that'll
So
be
from
great.
that onwards, I just didn't really stop in the independent world. And
Yeah.
but to me, they're all really good projects. Like to me, a great project is a great project, no matter uh, what size the budget is or
Yeah.
who's producing it. If there's a brilliant energy among everyone and everybody's there to sort of do something great, it's the best
Yeah.
feeling ever. You
Yeah.
know, um, I did a film with Michael Winterbottom, Shoshana, which is ironically about the birth of the Zionist sort of
Mm.
movement, and um but set in the 1930s when the British Empire were at the helm, and you had the friction between the Zionists and the sort of Muslim sort of communities.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually, the premiere at the London Film Festival was actually October the 7th. So the timing was just wow.
Wow.
Um, so I love doing films that have history and are saying something
Yeah.
important, and you're working with a director who is really open to new sounds and wants to do things differently.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've just been just grateful to have met a bunch of those people.
Mm.
But it's getting harder and harder to get films made. Um,
Yeah.
it's you know, um, we need to get back to the 1970s.
Yeah.
Like no,
Before
people should be making films as a kind of just a comment on this time that we're living in, you
yeah.
know, and
I know
inspiring.
I know Asif Kapadia is working on something really interesting at the minute. You know, that who did the Amy doc and stuff. He's got something that he's working on, which he's been keeping it quite close to his chest, but it very much as I think about the landscape that's going on at the minute, which I'll be interested to see what he does with that, for
Okay,
sure.
he's making a documentary about you too, isn't he?
Is he doing that as well? Wow. Oh wow.
Yeah, I
Amazing.
think so. I think so.
Oh, interesting to see that too.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask you about Sinead, David? Just,
Sure.
in terms of, do you mind?
Yeah,
Because
yeah. I mean, I'm not like, yeah. I mean, the only thing I've been told not to talk about is the music, because we have an album,
yeah,
and it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Um, and it's it's weirdly prophetic. Um, and yeah, it was an amazing experience. I can talk about that,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, what else can I say about the music? You know what I mean? The only thing I wouldn't, I don't even know if I would ever feel qualified to talk about Sinead's songs. I think that was the beauty of her. She used to tell me that she told people the songs were about something else, just to just it's none of their business. But that's the beauty about songs. People will take from it what they
Yeah.
will, and it will grow on so many different in so many different ways. But working with her was an extraordinary and beautiful experience. I to me, she was a woman of unbelievable integrity, um, in the sharpest wit. I mean, the crudest, uh, dirtiest humor, and yeah, so I was like, "Whoa," even for me, but actually laughing my tits off at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I met her in. Do you want to ask me something specific?
Well, I was interested as to how that project started with the
Sure.
album project started.
Well, I met her in at Shane MacGowan's 60th in Dublin, and there was a lot of amazing artists performing that night. Bobby and Nick Cave, Bono, Sinead, Imelda May. There was
Wow.
a ton of people that all there to for Shane,
Yeah.
and Sinead stole the show. Like, it wasn't even close. Like, I mean, she come on and she did "You're the One," and you could have heard a pin drop.
Mm.
It was so visceral and so beautiful, and she looked incredible. And I was just going, "Fucking hell!" And I've always loved her. I've always like really admired her. And I always knew she was right about you
Everything.
know, yeah, everything.
Yeah.
And and I knew that she had been punished badly, treated abominably. But uh, that night completely just, it was like every hair,
Yeah.
it was like, fuck, just the sheer power of that. So I was backstage after, and I just seen her out of the corner of my eye, and she was coming my direction. And I just stopped her and I says, "Look, I'm sure you don't know my name or anything about me or anything, but I'm a music producer and I would love to make a record with you about healing." And at that time, I'd been going through my own
Mhm.
mental health, and I was always looking for that way of um, sort of. I found that music always really helped me, and her ears pricked up, and
Hmm.
she related to that, and she said, um, she gave me a number, and I called her a couple of days later, and I started sending her pieces of music, and then she rang me up one day. I think it wasn't that long after that, and she says, "I'm moving to Belfast," and I was like, When are you thinking?" He says, "I'm on the motorway. I'm on mo- I'm on the way." So she got herself an Airbnb in Eglantine Avenue in Belfast, and then I went to see her. But I was going to my nephew's wedding
Mhm.
in Chicago, so I left her a couple of tracks, for her to write on,
Mhm.
and then she had one when I got back, and then I moved her into a little bungalow that I own just off the Ormer Road, and got the chimney swept and got the place looking nice for her. And she moved in there for a while, and so when I come back, we recorded the first song, and I can talk about this because she already released it. She just put it up online. Um, in fact, she's put some of the songs up online and then taken them down again. It's very Sinead. Fuck
Mhm.
it, I want you to hear it.
Yeah.
No, and she recorded that song, and then she left the house, and she wasn't in a great way. The track was Milestones, which if you listen to it, it was just
Yeah.
very, very heavy. It was just after she'd come back from America, and she'd done the Dr. Phil show and all that. But all very well documented. But she wasn't in a great place with her mental health at that point. And then we did another one, which is on the record. That hasn't been heard yet. That's really special. And then she went back to Dublin, and I never heard from her again for about a year. And then she contacted me through BP Fallon and said, "Look, would you like to pick up again?" I was like, "Of course, absolutely, like no problem." Like I fully recognized that Sinead had mental health issues. There was like
Yeah.
nothing that I was angry about, or um, you need to be extremely patient with people
Absolutely.
um, when they have mental health issues. And I think I'd learned probably a lot about that just from having my own mental health issues.
Yeah.
So I knew how I wanted to be handled,
Yeah.
even though we were on completely different.
Mhm.
Um, Sinead was on a different level of mental health. It was much more severe
Yeah.
than mine. But then we just picked up, and then she would send me a song, you
Mm.
know, that she had recorded on a karaoke machine, and it still sounded unbelievable, like a cappella,
Oh.
you know. And she says, "Can you work with that?" I went, "Fuck yeah!" So create the music around that and get that, the arrangement, everything, just with her vocals just cut in and stuff. And then she would come to Belfast and record for real.
Mm.
But the best story is when we did Trouble of the World for Black Lives Matter. She rang me, "I want to do Trouble of the World, Black Lives Matter. Can we do it?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah," you know? And I looked into sort of the music, and we discussed it, and I sent her, a couple of ideas, and just, taking it in this direction and having these really ghostly, early Disney kind of style, spiritual backing vocals. She was totally into it. So she just let me do my thing, and then I got my team together, and like just the A team, of like I had Robert Hurst playing upright bass, like he played at Alice Coltrane's funeral, and then this spiritual sort of choir from Detroit. And then she said, "Right, I'm coming up on Monday. We'll record the vocals." And then she came up, we recorded the vocals, and we did another song that was way better. But the other song had so much energy, and Trouble of the World was much more like emotional, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but we knew we hadn't got it right, And then she said, "I'll come back on Wednesday. I'll learn it. I'll spend a bit more time with it. Has to be perfect." And I was like, "Absolutely no problem." So I was up on the Wednesday night up until about 5 in the morning, and she, I just crawled into bed. It was about 5:30, crawling into bed, and I didn't think she was going to be coming up until like 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And doorbell went 9 o'clock, and Lisa says, I'll get it, I'll get it." Then Lisa appeared, like I'm back to sleep. Lisa appeared. "You're never going to believe who's at the front door." And I was like, "It's Sinead, isn't it?" She went, "Yeah." I get up, jump into the shower, like, just, and went downstairs, and she says, like, I was just so excited. You know,
Oh,
I was so excited to sing that song. I couldn't sleep. So I left Bray, which is like about 3.5 hour drive. I left Bray at about 4 a.m., 5 a.m., and I drove up. She'd been sitting in my driveway since 7:30 and waited until 9. So I come up, we set the mic up, and she just did it in one take. And I honestly, I've never woke up so fast in my life because I just knew I was never going to forget this moment.
yeah.
Um, and how amazing it was. And it was just like I knew I was having my Nina Simone. Like, this is like recording Nina Simone. That's
Yeah.
what you're dealing with here. And as a music producer, you only dream that you could have a moment like that, like ever. And it was so amazing. But she was so just like sort of nonchalant. And she went, I'm starving. So we went downstairs and we made her a bacon sandwich and a cup of tea. And I think it was like by 10, half 10, she was like back in the car way back to Bray.
Wow. Oh,
So
well,
yeah, but I can't wait for
to
people to
talk.
hear the record. It's really something,
I
you
can't wait to
know.
hear it.
I'm so happy that um we just, I got to know her a bit, as much as you can, like over
You
six
got to
years.
make memories.
Yeah, no, they're just, yeah. I mean, she made me laugh so much. And she'd ring me up and said, "How are you doing? I heard you're working too hard. Slow down. If you ever need to talk to me, I'm here." And I was like, wow, this woman,
Wow.
I mean, she's just the real thing. Have you read her memoir,
No,
Rememberings?
no.
Get the audiobook. Because she says, get the audiobook because the funny bits are much funnier. And it is, it's actually,
I'm going to
she
listen
just,
to that today, start on that today for sure. I
oh
thought
no, listen,
Catherine's documentary was amazing.
yeah, it was. It
I
was. And
thought,
Catherine's lovely.
yeah,
She's really talented, and she really, that was a proper labor of love,
yeah, yeah.
and she got
You can,
great support doing
yeah,
that from John Reynolds, and people really, they really helped her a lot. And yeah, but it's just strange to me
yeah,
when you see the definitive documentary, the definitive book, and the definitive album all appear, and she's not around
right.
to sort of, it's very sad that she's not
Yeah,
here to
yeah,
soak
well,
it all up. Because after she died, one of the most touching things for me was just the amount of fans, like especially girls growing up in Ireland in the 80s and 90s and stuff. And I lost count how many times I heard someone say she saved my life.
yeah,
And then you kind of realize that this is an artist of such extraordinary measures that she actually, without even knowing it,
yeah.
her
That's the thing,
suffer
isn't it? Not,
her
not,
suffering was helping other people, and how she expressed her suffering through song. And that suffering went on to sort of help so many people, especially girls, understand who they are, understand who they were, that they weren't alone. And to me, that is just the most extraordinary legacy that you could leave as an artist. Um, but there are stars, and there's people who are brilliant and like really clever and genius, and then you've got people who are on a different tier,
yeah.
like the Elvis and Ray Charles and Nina Simone and
Billie
Sinead O'Connor.
Holiday.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Bob Dylan, John Lennon, they're just,
yeah,
and I put her in that, you know,
absolutely.
definitely in that company.
Well, please, can we have a return chat when you can talk about it and we
I would
can,
love to. You,
yeah.
you you've got the exclusive.
Oh, I'd love that, David. It'd be just wonderful to celebrate her with you
Yeah, I
when
mean,
we can
listen,
talk about the music.
everyone's going to be all over me like a rash for this, right?
Of course.
So but I definitely want to be careful who I speak to, because you know, I just think
It's
I keep
precious.
on asking myself, what would Sinead do?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's not to sort of jump into bed with anyone to tell her story,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
through that last period, especially creatively speaking, because like everyone, it's funny. Go walking through the park and become a really good friend with this guy. He's only met him like when I was like turned 50, late 40s. He's a kickboxer, like world champion, 4 different weights. And we'd walk through the park, and sometime, we always say hello to people on the street. Hey,
Mm.
how's it going? And then some people would just like, you know, not even look at you. But the conversation that he would say to me, he says, it's so easy to think that someone is rude, but we have no idea what's going on inside their head or
Yeah.
what problems they're facing and stuff. And it definitely made me not look at that the same. Like, sometimes someone walk by, you just go, how rude, like, at least say hello back. But actually, that person could be going through hell in their own mind, and the last thing that's on their mind is kind of uh being happy,
Yeah.
or but yeah, Sinead had a lot of stuff going on, um for sure, um that I will never know or understand because I'm not living.
Yeah.
um you know
Exactly.
what I mean? We're all
Yeah.
on our own personal journey that's just full of, it's complex, isn't it?
Totally. Well, listen, see how you feel when it gets to that point
Oh no, listen,
when
100
when when it's
100%.
when it's out there, because I
I
would
tell you what, once I find out that the album's being released, um, what we could do is we could even do it way in advance.
yeah.
So you've got it before
And then you
anybody.
can listen back to it and see if you're happy with it and all that stuff as well.
Oh no, I completely trust you 100%. That's
Thank
a
you.
given. So it's all good.
Amazing.
All right, darling.
Thanks for your time. It's been a bloody
Oh,
treat. Finally, I feel like we hardly like. I didn't go through my list of stuff I wanted to talk about, but we got loads of other times to do that, I hope.
all right. Thank you so much.
Take
All
care,
right.
David. Have a
Bye,
great
darling.
day. Lots of
You
love.
too.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.